Shri Alan Govind.
Thank you, Chairman Sir, for permitting me to speak on the demands for grants railways. Sir, at the outset, I have to appreciate the efforts of the Railway Minister in announcing various schemes in the interest of the people. Particularly, there is no increase in passenger fares and freight tariffs, because railway users are more in number in our country and a large number of people are benefited by this. Secondly, 100% concession for cancer patients along with an escort. It is a good gesture. Then, the question papers for the RRBs will be made available in local state languages besides Hindi, Urdu and English. Examinations will be held on the same day in all regions. Next is 170 new train projects to be flagged off by the end of March 2010. Special trains to mark Rabindranath Tagore 150th birth anniversary. All the unmanned level crossings to be manned within 5 years. National High Speed Rail Authority proposed to plan high speed rail corridor. Further, the Honorable Railway Minister has announced more number of suburban trains in Chennai. Particularly for Tamil Nadu, the Honorable Railway Minister has announced 3 new passenger trains, 1 more Duronto Express from Coimbatore to Chennai, 2 more long distance trains, and as much as 8 trains covering the various railway cities in Tamil Nadu under the Bharat Teerth scheme, and 5 new long distance trains which touches one or another city in Tamil Nadu. I thank the Honorable Railway Minister for all these new announcements, but I have to make certain requests, demands to the Honorable Railway Minister. Sir, the total annual plan outlay for railways is 41,426 crores. But Tamil Nadu gets only a meager amount of 700 crores. That is not enough, because Tamil Nadu has the longest meter gauge railroad. About 1,152 kilometers of the railway lines in Tamil Nadu are meter gauge lines. So, gauge conversion must be given a priority, for which more allocation should be made for the railway infrastructure in the state. Sir, with the present funding, I think Tamil Nadu railway projects will take about at least 20 years for the completion of the various projects which were announced earlier. So, budgetary allocation, the plan outlay, Tamil Nadu should be given more amount to complete the various projects which were already announced by the various railway ministers for the past 10 years or 15 years. Sir, the gauge conversion projects have been taken up and only 3,000 crores is allotted for the same. 300 crores is allotted for the same. But at least we need at least 700 crores for 1 year for the gauge conversion to make definite progress or a conceivable progress. Then doubling of Chennai Kanyakumari, sir. Chennai Kanyakumari railway line is one of the major railway lines used by the people of Tamil Nadu. It is a very highly economically viable route. a doubling of this route will definitely fetch a huge profit to the railways. But only one section of the route, Chennai-Kanyakumari, that is between Chennai and Chengalpet, it is around 56 or 57 kilometers, is completed. And Chengalpet-Viluppuram doubling work is going on slowly, and at this pace, it may take more than 5 years for completion. The next Viluppuram-Dindigul doubling is still in paper for the past 2 years, and the amount allotted is only 30 crores. But the project cost has gone up by 450 crores. Originally, the cost was 750 crores. Now, after 2 years, the cost would be 1,200 crores. And if it is further delayed, the cost may go further up. So the Railway Ministry should allot more funds for this project also. Then the last stage, Madurai-Kanyakumari, has not yet, the project is not yet sanctioned. I request the Honorable Railway Minister to sanction this project also. So, for the new lines, Ariyalur, Tanjavur, Dindigul, Kumali, Morapur, Dharmaburi, Tiruvannamalai and Jolarpet, the Railway Minister, the projects were given sanction earlier, but because of the non-availability of funds by the state government could not share the cost with the railways. But these are all economically viable projects, so the railways themselves can take these projects up and complete it. Chennai-Kadalur via Mamallapuram, along the east coast, the project was announced 2 years back, but there is no progress. Electrification, railway electrification, work between Madurai-Kanyakumari and Madurai-Tuticorin has to be taken up. Sir, the Honorable Railway Minister had announced dedicated freight corridor between Mumbai, Delhi and Kolkata. Chennai, Delhi, Chennai, Kolkata, Chennai, Mumbai also should be taken up along with these two projects.
Ludhiana to Kolkata, Eastern Corridor.
Though the budget speaks of a techno-economic study, the status paper presented to the standing committee does not have a mention of the project. This project was mentioned, but the status paper presented to the standing committee does not mention about this project. Please, it should also be included there. Sir, with regard to my constituency, I have two requests to make to the Honorable Minister. All trains, inbound trains coming to Chennai Central from north, from Calcutta, from Delhi,
Patna,
should be stopped at Tiruvattriyur, which is about 10 kilometers away, a suburb which is about 10 kilometers away from Chennai Central, so that the passengers need not come to Chennai Central and go back to their houses. Likewise, Rayapuram, one of the oldest railway stations in Chennai, should be made the third passenger terminal along with Chennai Central and Chennai Egmore. And subways, Chennai, most of the railway level crossings were converted to subways in Chennai, but two more has to be included. One is at Korattur and the other is at Ambattur. So I hope the Railway Minister will consider, in spite of the fact that she had given more number of trains, she had given more concessions to the people, she had included Tamil as one of the languages for writing the exams, she will also consider these requests favorably. Thank you, sir.
Next.
CTKS Elegovan.
Thank you, Chairman, sir, for permitting me to speak on this National Green Tribunal Bill, which is a welcome measure from the side of the government. Sir, some 10 years back when the leader of the DMK parliamentary group, Mr. T.R. Balu, was the Minister for Environment and Forests, I had suggested that there should be a green bench in the Supreme Court of India and all the high courts of judicature. And now I think some high courts have a green bench. Sir, this bill is a welcome measure in the sense that it is not just the interpretation of the laws relating to environment, but also the knowledge on science, that is geophysical scientists, biological scientists are also will be members of this tribunal, because it is more than the law that environmental issues are related to the other areas of science also. One good thing about this act is that this act is introduced, this bill is introduced on the suggestion of the Supreme Court of India, which has been the authority in deciding these issues, the legal issues, and the Government of India, which has been the appellate authority on various issues of environment protection. Sir, we know that industrial development is always at the cost of environment. There is no industrial development without affecting the environment. We have steps to abate pollution, but we cannot have a zero pollution. If we want to have a zero pollution, there should not be any industrial activity, and that will otherwise affect the country's economy. Sir, when the honorable member from the BJP, Anant Kumar Hegde, was talking the other day on this bill, he was telling something which led to some confusion in my mind. I am not going to reply to his question because our honorable Minister for Environment is well capable of replying to all these things. But he had certain apprehension because of his non-understanding the concept of this bill. Sir, we had an experience earlier. We had this Central Appellate Tribunal. We had the State Appellate Tribunals for settling matters relating to the service, government servants. This National Green Tribunal is also on the same line, which would settle the issues relating to environment outside the courts. Sir, when my friend was talking, he was talking about the compensation.
Please.
He was talking about the compensation given to those people who are affected by the environmental issues, like the Bhopal gas tragedy. It is not only that. It will help the industrialists to approach these tribunals and to say that their industry will not pollute the area, or either the industry to come or not to come, depending on the area where the impact on environment is more or less. As I was telling you, the Central Appellate Tribunal and State Appellate Tribunals were very much helpful in settling matters relating to various issues raised by the government servants, central government servants and state government servants. Sir, but one thing I must tell the Minister, that this bill should not have the same fate as that of the National Environmental Tribunal 1995 and the National Environmental Appellate Authority 1997. They are dead. The government has not formed the authority, and I don't know what happened to them. Secondly, when I went through the bill, I studied the bill and found that there are issues when when the tribunal is equally divided, then there is another appeal. Sir, the question of tribunal being equally divided once again will put the issue, delay the issue. So I want the Honorable Minister to have the tribunal in odd numbers so that there is no equal division in decisions. There should be a decision on one way. So all these things the minister has to take care. I fully support the bill. The bill is a very essential one in this context. Most of the time we forget about the eco balance which should be maintained in the country. So this bill will help the country to maintain its ecological balance. This bill will protect the people who are affected by the environmental issues, and this bill will definitely do justice to all sections of the people, both the common man, the industrialists and the government. With these words, I support the bill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Only 2 minutes. Only 2 minutes. Only 2 minutes.
Just a minute, sir.
नहीं,
Deputy Speaker, sir, thank you for this
आप भी
opportunity.
बोलेंगे तो 2 मिनट देंगे आपको,
Sir.
देख आपके पार्टी से
Deputy
हमको कोई
Speaker,
एतराज
sir,
थोड़ी है.
We
Only
also-
2 minutes.
Yeah, just 2 minutes, sir. We also want to support the issue of having census on the basis of caste.
Thank you.
That doesn't mean that we are supporting caste
Yeah, no?
system, but we will know the class, the OBCs and SCs and STs only by a system which will have caste.
You are
on caste
supporting the
basis
demand.
for census.
You are supporting
So
the demand
we
to
support-
discuss.
we are- Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gurdas, good.
Shri T.K.S. Elangovan.
Not from Lake.
Please, honorable members, allow them to speak, don't disturb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for permitting me to speak on this very important subject. Sir, we come from a state where Tandai Periyar, E.V. Ramasamy, self-respect movement had a great impact. The impact was such that in the whole of India, there is only one state, that is Tamil Nadu,
Yes, sir.
where people do not attach their caste names along with their names. That is the only state in the whole of India where people do not attach their caste names. We are against caste differences. We do not want caste. But how to abolish caste? By empowering them. How to abolish caste? By empowering them. I can quote one classic example in Tamil Nadu. There was a particular community of people, particular caste of people who were called the denotified class.
Honorable members,
They
please,
were even made to
kindly allow
go
him
to
to
the
speak,
police
don't disturb
stations
him.
and sign daily. Those people, they are not scheduled tribes. They are from backward classes. One great leader of Tamil Nadu, Pasumpan Muthuramalingam Thevar, who was also a member of this house twice, fought for their rights, and those people were identified, targeted, they were given education, and they were rehabilitated. So only because we could identify as to which caste they belong, the government could rehabilitate them. So it is not that there are certain communities, sir. The figures say that India's literacy rate is 64%. What about the remaining 36%? Do they belong to, are they spread over in all communities? No. There are certain communities which are isolated from the mainstream. We should identify them. They believe that they are backward classes. They are the people who have to serve the upper caste because of Manu Dharma. They believe that Chadurvanyam Maya Srishtam. Chadurvanyam is the creation of God. So when God said something, that we should follow. Those people, they are still not uplifted. They have to be identified. They have to be targeted. How will you identify them? Unless you know their castes. How will you rehabilitate them? Unless you know the caste. Sir, I wish to quote Dr. Ambedkar. Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, in his classic work, Who Were the Shudras, had stated that
if people have no idea of the magnitude of the problem of the Shudras, it is because they have not cared to know what the population of Shudras is. Unfortunately, the census does not show their population separately, but there is no doubt that excluding the untouchables, the Shudras form 75 to 80% of the population of Hindus. This has to be taken note of. Ambedkar is a great social reformer. He has to be considered very seriously. Only then India will have a casteless society in the future. Caste cannot be abolished by law. You should empower the people. You should empower the downtrodden people so that you can abolish caste. So, to empower them, you should identify them. And hence, caste-based enumeration is necessary. Sir, the backward classes commission formed, 3 commissions were formed. None of the commissions could give a proper figure because there is no census based on caste. I would like to quote the Havanur Commission report 1975. The government cannot hide behind the provisions of the Constitution. They cannot say that the Article 15, 16 and 29(2) of the Constitution prohibits them from having a caste-based census. I can quote Havanur Commission. Sir, quote, we have got to examine the correctness or the bona fides of such an assertion. It is to be noted that Articles 15, 16 and 29 bracket 2 prohibit the state from making discrimination against any citizen on grounds not only of caste but also religion, race, sex, place of birth, descent, residence and language. Have the religions, caste, races, languages, etc. ceased to exist because of prohibition of discrimination? No. One fails to understand the logic of the contention that the abolition of caste particulars in census was right when other particulars relating to religion, race, sex, place of birth, descent and language are enumerated in the census. The logic or the reason that is applied in the abolition of caste particulars would also have been applied in matters relating to religion, race, sex, place of birth, descent and language. What is the justification? Just 2 minutes, sir. What is the justification in the enumeration of people on the ground of their place or residence in urban and rural areas? What is the justification in the enumeration of people of their particular descent, like Anglo-Indians? Further, what is the justification to mention the similarly prohibited aspects of religion, race, sex, place of birth, residence and descent in the birth and death registers, in the admission registers of schools and colleges, and the service registers of government servants? Have they not made people conscious of their religion, sex, race and language? It is not discriminatory against Hindu caste if particulars of caste are not enumerated. This was a report found from the Havanur Commission 1975, sir. So the government should consider this to target the people, to target the backward people, to identify the people and to rehabilitate them. Caste-wise enumeration is necessary, and I wish to join the other members of this side in requesting the government to have a caste-wise census, sir. Thank you.
Shri Ramchandra.
इनको डिसिप्लिन करिए आप अपनी सेना को.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for permitting me to speak on this subject. Madam Chairman, I'm not going to take much time of this House. On behalf of the DMK, I support the demand for grants. Our honorable leader from the BJP, Mr. Yashwant Sinha Ji, has stated in his speech that this supplementary demands for grants was placed now so that during the budgetary exercise, the government wanted to adjust to present a budget in a way that it is not an inflationary budget. But on going into the expenditures mentioned in this supplementary demands, I think I beg to differ from his views. Most of the expenditures mentioned in this
supplementary demands are for expenses for matters which had occurred after the presentation of the budget, specifically the Bhopal Gas Victims Fund, the National Knowledge Network Program, or the implementation of Right to Education Act. The amount spent is 4,000 crores. The bill was passed after the budget was passed. For recruitment of special police force for left-wing extremism. It is a growing concern of this country. So it needs an expenditure. So most of these expenditures were required now, which were not required during the presentation of the annual budget in February 2010. Mr. Yashwant Singh Raji also talked about corruption, but I don't know why he had left about tax evasion. Maybe because that was a ransom claimed from him in the year 1998 to save his government, he being a witness to that. So tax evasion and corruption are two enemies of the country that I think Yashwant Shubra will accept. Madam, most of these expenditure, like the Prime Minister's Gram Sadak Yojana, creation of capital assets to various institutions under technical education, rupees 2,070 crores, transfer to states and UTs, rupees 6,379 crores, to increase RBI shareholding in NABARD and National Housing Bank, 1,900 crores. Most of these expenditures are required today or for claim disposal of National Agricultural Insurance Schemes, rupees 2,212 crores. Then there are the ICR revision of salary provision, rupees 1,074 crores, and new raisings in the eastern sector for the defense ministry, 1,500 crores. All these are expenditures which are required after the presentation of the budget. So these are all expenditures which the country needs. Non-plan expenditure is 29,575 crores and net plan expenditure is 25,012 crores. On behalf of the DMK, we support the draft supplementary demand. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the outset,
No, later, please. Yes, last.
at the outset,
Please restrict.
short. I'm happy that such a mega event is going to be hosted by our country. Such events will not only showcase the sporting talents of the country, but will also showcase the culture, the history, and various other aspects of the host country. We are proud that that event is to be held in our country within a short while. Sir, even before the Commonwealth Games starts, our opposition friends want to win a gold. So they make charges based on some newspaper reports, charges based on some of the interim reports presented by various agencies of the government, like the CAG, the CVC, etc. Sir, these agencies are there to give interim reports to the government so that the government could take some correctional measures to rectify the mistakes that are
Honorable
happened.
members, please.
So these reports
He's making some points.
should not be used to accuse a government or to make charges against the government. Sir, newspaper reports, as you see, sometimes if we rely more on the newspaper reports, what had happened today will happen. A report on the UK tabloid Sunday Express sometimes back was refuted today by a report of the Times of India dated 9/10 today, as of today. So these reports should be brought to the notice of the government to take correctional steps and should not be used to accuse the government or abuse the government making use of these reports. Sir, our dear friend Mr. Kirti Azad, he is a good cricketer. He bowled a short pitch delivery to intimidate the bowler, the batsman,
You
the
won't get-
opponent.
Please,
But
hear this.
it was declared a wide ball. There was no, except one or two charges, he could not make many charges using the reports of the CAG and CVC. At the same time, my request to the honorable members is that it is a great event where about 70 countries, more than 70 countries of the Commonwealth, members, sportsmen from these countries are going to come to our country to show their sporting talent. So at this time, making accusations like this should not hamper the sports itself. That is my request. At the same time, the government should be very careful, sir. I request the government that these observations of the CAG and the CVC should be taken seriously. The government should not be lethargic in considering and correcting and taking correctional steps based on the reports of the CAG and CVC. Finally, sir, my one request to the government is that the group of ministers should be empowered to meet every week until the games are over to see how the game progresses. And I request the honorable ministers here to convey these sentiments to the Prime Minister also and see that the group of ministers are empowered to meet every week. Thank you, sir.
Sri Jaipal.
House
TKS
and before-
Elangovan.
in the chance.
Thank you, madam. At the outset, I welcome this amendment bill as introduced by the Honorable Law Minister, madam. Madam, Tamil Nadu was the first state in the year 1989 which had brought in a legislation to give equal share to the male and female of the ancestral properties hitherto which was enjoyed by only the male children of a family. 30% of the government jobs go for women in Tamil Nadu. In elementary schools, teachers, only lady teachers were appointed in all the elementary schools in Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu has been the pioneer in helping the women in enforcing women rights in the state. On those lines, this bill also gives rights to the women and hence I welcome the bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sri TKS Elangovan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On behalf of the DMK party, I express my support to this bill. Madam, the fear raised by many of the members is based on the earlier use of the nuclear energy. Earlier, nuclear energy was used for destructive purposes, for like what had happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, nuclear materials are used for a civilian purpose, like production of generation of electricity, that too on a high scale. The government envisages an estimated capacity of 40,000 megawatt over a period of 25 years. A time may come with the dwindling of petroleum sources, even the cars, a technology may evolve wherein even the cars will be operated with the nuclear energy. With the development of science, anything is possible. But our mindset is still in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That is the problem now we are facing. Madam, 25 years back, when Bhopal gas tragedy occurred, the country did not speak against any chemical installation in the country. Even after that, for the past 25 years, Many chemical industries have come up in this country. I can even say that in Gujarat, Gujarat leads in the chemical industries. So, a single accident cannot make an industry non-viable in our country. But there is a possibility of an accident. We don't think anything having in mind the pessimistic side. We have an optimistic side, but there are possibilities of an accident. So this bill is necessary. Somebody spoke of the, some of the leaders, honorable leaders spoke of the America's high-handedness here. But I don't think that America has a high-handed affair in this, because we need energy, we need power, we need to produce power. Our coal-based thermal power plants are not eco-friendly, environment-friendly. Only hydel power plants can be said as eco-friendly. So the danger caused by thermal power plants may be less, but the danger which might occur on the nuclear plant may be more. So this liability bill is introduced here. Madam, generally my humble request to the Honorable Minister is that when a law of this size, of this importance is brought, there must be a system to make it completely democratic with the involvement of common people, NGOs and interest groups. All such legislations must be made widely available for public debate and discussion for some time at least, so that the government will receive useful, purposeful suggestions from the public and interested groups. Secondly, sir, there was a talk about the liability of the supplier. There is a provision in this act, sir. Section 17, this bill, sir. The operator of a nuclear installation shall have a right of recourse where such right is expressly provided for in a contract in writing. Sir, we know that almost all the power plants, nuclear-based power plants, is going to be run by the government. 51% of the share will be the government's. So why can't you make it mandatory to have this section, an express provision of the recourse, right of recourse, in the agreement itself between the government and the supplier? That would be a way out and make them liable, even the suppliers liable, and our friends' demands, our other leaders' demands will also be met. Sir, with these words, I welcome this bill. This bill will go a long way in the energy production of this country. With the development in science and technology, this may go a long way in the other resources also, in the healthcare, in even, as I said earlier, in driving of automobiles in this country. I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Srivas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Shri T.K.S. Elangovan.
Madam Speaker, at the outset, I welcome this amendment. But I have one or two points of clarification which, through you, I would like to ask the Honorable Minister. Madam Speaker,
परमिशन लिया
कौन?
अपनी
notwithstanding...
सीट पर है. Are you on your seat? Is this your seat?
Yeah, it is my seat.
Or then what is your problem? नहीं, आप कंटिन्यू करिए. Don't disturb.
क्यों ये डिस्टर्ब
आप कंटिन्यू.
अरे ये है,
The section 2.
कोई गलत फीडबैक दे दिया आपको. गलत,
Please
Section 2.
continue.
कोई गलत बता दी.
The amendment 20A1 says, notwithstanding anything contained in the act, every citizen of India
बाद में
whose
बता.
name is not included in the electoral roll,
कभी आते हैं ना इस
and B, who has not acquired the citizenship of any other country.
TMC
My question is, when now we are providing dual citizenship to the Indian origin people, whether
he is eligible to enroll his name in the voters list of India because he has already acquired a passport of citizenship of some other country. This is my one question. My second question, madam, is that hitherto, the rule says that a person who is ordinarily a resident of an area can register his votes. Now that this amendment removes that word, ordinarily resident, so an Indian who is not ordinarily a resident of a specific area, when his name is registered in the voter list of that area, when he shifts his residence to some other place, whether the electoral registration officer has the powers to delete his name on his own. That is my question. Sir, there are electoral registration rules. Under these rules, before deleting a name, the electoral registration officer has certain steps to follow. He has to put the names on the display, on the board, for a person to verify. But sometimes, many times, the names are deleted without the knowledge of the voter himself. So, the government should have some punitive measures, fix the responsibility on the electoral registration officers, and take some punitive measures that the names are not deleted in a proper manner. With these words, I support the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Shri P.
Shri T.K. Selangon ji.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for permitting me to speak on the motion for appointment of a joint committee to go into various aspects of telecom licensing. Madam, when the leader of the opposition was speaking, she was talking about certain things regarding the last session where they were not allowed to run the session, and the leader was blaming on the government for not allowing the session to go. Madam, I would like to say one thing. The session was not held. No business was conducted in this house. But one man, who is our man, there was a heavy offensive on him without knowing the facts, without going into the merits, by certain reports which were leaked. All leaders of the opposition who are here started accusing him, abusing him in the public. Had there been a discussion held in this house, as was suggested by the leader of the house, we would have come to many conclusions. I can even say the 3 subjects which were selected for the JPC could have decreased or even increased. But there was no discussion. He was accused. He was abused. There was an offensive by the media, by the leaders of the opposition, by the other party members. He has no opportunity to explain his position. Even the government was not given an opportunity to explain the position. Madam, I have great regard for the office of the C&AG. Like any other office, constituted constitutional authority or an office by an act of the legislature or as parliament. But the opposition took an opportunity based on the leaked reports to attack the government, to take political mileage of the government. That is not fair. A leaked report. Now, my question is, I have great regard for the office of the C&AG, not the person occupying the chair. It was leaked, which also should be, this committee should go into, should be added in the terms of reference of this JPC. Yes. Secondly, madam, one more observation. When the leader of the opposition was talking, she was talking about the observation made by the Supreme Court. Madam, I can say only one thing. If an adjudicator becomes a prosecutor,
there ends justice in this land. If an adjudicator becomes a prosecutor, there is no scope for a common man to get justice. If they are approving it, then that shows the mindset of the opposition. So, with these words, I support this motion. Thank you.